there, Banditos. It's Wednesday, so that must mean another episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits is coming right at you. As always, we fling open the doors of your local comic book shop and talk to your favorite comic book creators of yesteryear and today. And as always, we're bringing you another awesome, fantastic episode. But before we get to that, let's get the intros out of the way. I am Joe Marcello.
I'm Warren Phillips.
And our buddy Mike couldn't be here tonight, but have no fear. He's in the actual interview. All right. So we're all here. All right. And we're bringing you a great episode. I can't stress this enough. When Mike and Oren kind of got together and put these gentlemen together for us, I was really surprised. Okay. We have a panel, guys, not just one person or two people. We have a panel. All right. We have Ron Frenz, Tom DeFalco, and Brett Breeding. That's right. Three guys. Okay. A panel. I'm going to stress that. Oren, what is it?
It's a panel, I believe.
It's a panel.
Call it. Yeah.
Okay. So we got these three together because of their work on their latest and greatest of MC2, The Return of A Next. Now, if you guys don't remember that, and look, this was a really cool series. I enjoyed it. But it's been a while since we've kind of heard from these characters in a while, or I could say a little bit more. Basically, it was a alternate version of basically the descendants of our favorite Marvel characters. And they come together and they form their own team. So our three guests got together and they brought you a new story arc that spanned 3 issues.
Yeah, and when you think about Tom DeFalco, one of the best writers out there, one of the best editors out there. You have Ron Frenz, who we love his work. I know a lot of folks do. Look at his work on Thor, look at his work on Spider-Man. He's, done so much, was a part of so many Superman too. So many key moments in the story of the biggest characters in comics. And then you throw in Brett Breeding, in my opinion, the best inker in comics today. Put them all together. This is going to be an amazing book. And it is an amazing book. It came out last month in March. Having them all together on the show was great. It's the most people we've ever had on one screen. But great stories. You could tell these guys really like each other. They respect each other. And the process that came into making this book, it's absolutely fascinating. So we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed talking to these 3 legends. So let's get right to it. So the first question, I guess we'll go around, and Ron, I'll start with you, was how did you meet Brett and Tom?
How did I meet Brett and Tom? Well, I met Tom over the phone first because he became my editor. He hired me to do Marvel Team Up after seeing me do Spider-Man on Kesar. So he called and asked if I was interested to do some team up stories, and told me that, he was very hard to please and he could be a bit of a bastard. And I went, okay, because I really was hungry for some feedback at that point. Louise Jones is a fantastic editor, but you're kind of thrown in on the deep end and you get a little bit of post-game feedback, but you don't get a lot in the course of it. So his threat was not a threat to me at all, because I was hungry for feedback and input. Brett, I met him at a Spider-Man, what would we call those things, Tom? It was a big Spider-Man meeting where back when Marvel could afford to fly people into New York and with summits. We had a Spider-Man summit. And I believe that was the first time I met a whole bunch of people. It was the first time I met Brett and Kyle Baker, who was working as Rubenstein's background guy at the time, Mark Silvestri, Dave Michelini, a whole bunch of people. And we hung out. We were all in the same hotel for the couple of days we were there, and hung out and got to know each other. And I visited him in Delaware. He visited me in Pittsburgh. We became friends over the years. So yeah, it was those are the 2. I met Tom in person finally at a show in Pittsburgh. He and Butch Geist were both guests, and we went out to dinner, and that's when we kind of really found out that we enjoy the same type of comics. Was that before or after you hired me? That was after.
My memory of is shot. I have no idea if that was before or after. I think it was after.
I'm pretty sure that was, yeah, I think we met on the phone first, and I think we were working together when we finally met at the show. really not positive about that, but I know it was in person that we found out that we liked the same kind of comics and the hoo-ha Marvel style and all that kind of jazz. And it kind of, you know, we became aware of each other. We were working together as editor freelancer. And then when he moved off of editing Spider-Man to become executive editor, and Danny Fingeroth came up with the idea of having him script it, you know, we already knew each other, and we started working together as a team, penciler writer, and because we like the same kind of comics, it tended to gel pretty quickly.
So what's your thoughts, Brett? What is it, same memory as Ron?
Yeah, it was that Spider-Man summit, and you know, we just hit it off and started to keep in touch afterwards, and the rest is history, as they say.
I got him in trouble early on because he was, you know, he was asking me what I liked and what I wanted in an inker, and so I was stupidly trying to, you know, maintain my pencils a little too much, and I was asking him to put those little halos around characters because that's what Sal was doing when he inked himself at the time, and we both got in trouble for it because Shooter hated those halos.
Did you actually say you got me in trouble once?
Come on.
And Tom, what are your thoughts about you know, working with Ron and Brett artistically in their style?
Well, you know, I mainly work with Ron, you know, because we're the guys putting the story together and that sort of thing. You know, Brett happens to be a fantastic inker, and everybody knows that. And I, you know, always love the you know, the final product when Brett's inking.
Come on, say it, Tom. Don't hold back.
All right, you do a good job, Brett. Pain in the ass.
Yeah, when I would get it in, it was okay.
Well, when you finally got it in, it was always pretty good.
But I always keep dragging Brett into this dysfunctional relationship because, and Tom understands because we always love the final product. So Brett goes off and does Superman and becomes famous, and I'm always dragging him back for these projects, and he's a sucker for my sad eyes, and you know, and Tom completely understands why I want to work with him, and you know, and when at its best, it works great, like a well-oiled machine.
And at its worst?
And at its worst, it's
it's a headache.
Yeah, a headache. That's it. We'll say a headache. It can be a headache for all of us, for everybody involved, because I sometimes am not as fast with my pencils as I should be, and the inker ends up having to clean up my mess, and Brett's been put in that situation more times than is fair, and it's one of the things about being an inker that you know, you're an anchor man, you know, along with a lot of the other production guys like colorists and letterers. You know, they tend to be the anchor man and have to clean up the mess of the genius creators that are dealing with the blank page. You know, so it's not easy. None of it's easy for anybody. So, but at this point, I mean, this job, I mean, we had a real quick turnaround time. Are we talking specifically about the Infinity thing?
Yeah, I was going to jump in that, and I'll throw out the question for all of you, but, you know, Ron, you can take it first, which is really, how did this project come together? So we're talking about Next, right?
Yeah.
There's the property coming out of MC2, the sort of new universe or side universe, however you want to describe it.
Most people call it the Spider-Girl universe now, or MC2.
Spider-Girl universe.
Or what is it? It's they also know which Earth it is, which I never remember because I think that's
yeah. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
Is it a numbered Earth?
Well, it's the one they always do, like 616 is based on the year and the month, and
right.
They do that for MC2, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
our research didn't go that deep.
We all got at a different point. We all got an email from Martin Biro, who was the editor on those projects, and he asked us. We were surprised. I was surprised that he said A next, and we went cool. And you know, Brett's always my first choice for projects like that if he's available. Plus, it was getting the original band back together because we were actually, for the first chapter, recreating flashbacks from that first issue. So it was a pretty natural fit. And you know, we were, it was a pretty quick turnaround time, especially for the second one, because of the way they're scheduled and everything. But overall, I think you know, I love the way it came out. We finally got PDFs. I don't log on to that stuff or anything, but Martin was finally able to send us PDFs of the final project, and it colored up real nice. But you know, not only does Brett make my pencils look gorgeous, he's also the only one in the team that's willing to get into the reads with emails on correcting coloring mistakes and stuff. Because when I see the first pass and some of it looks great and there's little details that are screwed up, and I throw up my hands and go, yeah, it looks fine. And Brett says, no, it's wrong. And he'll go do the email where he goes page by page and points out the coloring mistakes. And Martin wanted that feedback. I mean, he was willing to go back to the colorist and do the corrections. And it ended up looking fantastic. But I have to admit, it's mostly because Brett was willing to do the due diligence and do the follow-up emails and everything. And I can't thank him enough, because he's solely responsible even for the really good coloring. So
Yeah, I'm kind of used to it with coloring. I usually leave it to Ron.
I only worry about getting the characters colored right, but even then, I've made a lot of concessions just based on frustration, you know, that kind of thing. And Brett lives with frustration, so apparently that being his natural state, he goes with the flow a lot more than I does, and he makes the requests, and they made the changes. So God love them all. You know.
Yeah.
Who was Chris Sotomayor the colorist on that, Brett?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and he's a total pro. I mean, he runs that Soto color and everything. But yeah, he did a good job. He or his people, whoever colored it, it's credited to Chris, and they did a great job. So I have no notes.
And I'd also like to, you know, give our editor, you know, Martin, a real pat on the back. I think he did a good job, you know, coordinating everything.
Yeah, he was great to work with.
Yeah, he was terrific.
He was responsive and he was open. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was a good experience.
So, Tom, the question I have for you is basically, how did you come up with the story for this? And did you have to kind of refamiliarize yourself with these, you know, this universe?
Because these characters that I hadn't seen in about 10, 15 years.
As a comic book reader, I haven't even thought about them in forever, especially since that
haven't
universe.
What? Hold it. Wait a minute.
Well,
Stop. You haven't thought about my work
May I say?
No. Not your work specifically, the universe, because we have been told as readers that universe went away. So now
Alex Ross has painted those characters on covers, and
look, I'm not.
When they do a multiversal thing, our guys show up. Don't give me that crap.
Look, this isn't the Alex Ross roundtable. I can't keep up with all the multiverses and universes and stuff.
Oh, you're just embarrassing yourself now. Stop.
Yeah, this is shocking to me.
Look, do you want to talk about Superman Blue? We can do that again.
Oh, hey, come on. Yes, I had to, you know, go back and reread a few issues of ANX just so that I could remember how the characters talked and how they acted. It's funny, J2 came right back to me. The initial idea for the story, I have to give Ron credit for that, because when we first found out about this assignment, I probably said the same thing to Ron. I haven't thought about these characters in years. I have no idea for a story. And Ron pointed out that in the first issue of ANX, we mentioned that there was a party at Asgard. And, there's a footnote, or a line of dialogue or a caption or something. Remind us to tell you about it someday. And Ron said, why don't you tell people about it? And that was the starting point. And then, once we had a starting point, we, started talking, and then the story just kind of formed itself, as these things often do.
So, question I have for these, as pertains to these kind of alternate versions of characters, because that's kind of what these characters are. You seems like you could just have fun with them. You're kind of with the more in continuity universe, 616, whatever number it is, kind of constrained to those characters and their profiles, I guess. But it seems like you guys can kind of have a little bit more fun. You have a little more room to play with as pertains to these characters, because you're not.
That impression is correct. Yes, that's one of the things that makes it so much fun.
Cool.
Yeah, but you can also have fun with the traditional characters, because there's always the Marvel universe is so rich that you can look at these characters and find new insights and new understanding of them, and you can always come up with something new. And as creators, that's kind of our job, is to create new stuff or new insights. And I have fun with the regular characters. I don't deal with them that much these days, but our whole goal is to have fun while we're working on this stuff.
This one's for everyone too, but I'll start with Brett. Is there a specific Avengers character that you really enjoy either drawing or inking, or one that you would really love to dive into a little bit more?
Well, Thor was always my favorite character. The Avengers was always the book that got me in comics. I'd love to work on Captain America, at some point. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a 4-page story with Dan Jurgens coming up. But, I would love to work on something with Ron someday, because he just captures that character so well. But I love these characters too, because they still feel like the Avengers to me. They feel like an evolution of the Avengers I grew up with. And so I don't know if that answers the question.
It certainly does. Ron, what about you? Is there a certain Avenger that you enjoy drawing the most? I mean, I know Thor's, of course, near and dear to your heart, but anyone else that you like drawing or would like to really dig into?
Me?
Hmm?
Of the next characters, all of them. I mean, I was an Avengers fan as well, and I always enjoyed the big three. But I also was reading I was a big fan during the Vision, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Goliath phase, and I'm a big fan of those characters as well. But I mean, as far as next, they're all my children, and I love them all. I mean, I'm always going to have a soft spot for Kevin, but I mean, it's fun to deal with those characters because they're not being messed with between things. I mean, even with Spider-Girl, I mean, she got used and slightly beat up between incidences where Tom and I were able to play with her. So, you do have to deal with it. The whole time we were doing MC2, it was a pleasure to have our own little corner of the multiverse where we didn't have to worry about crossovers and we didn't have to worry about other people's continuities and all that kind of stuff. And for that reason, creatively, it's not only a lot of fun, it's just, I mean, early on, there was some contention that everybody was thinking because Tom was involved in it, that the MC2 was now the official future, and they all wanted to weigh in on what happened to their characters and everything. And it took a little while for everybody to relax and loosen their sphincters over the fact that no, we're doing our own little stories over here. We're not hurting anybody. If you don't like what we do with our character, get over it and move on, because it's not going to affect the 616. What's funny about it is in the ensuing years, a lot of the stuff we did in in the MC2 has become a self-fulfilling prophecy in the 616. I mean, Cassie is now Stinger in the 616. I mean, I don't know. There've been other examples too of them doing some of the stuff. I mean, a lot of the stuff that they did in Renew Your Vows was very, very much paralleled or echoed stuff we did in our Spider-Girl run. And you know, I'll take great mind. Yeah, it's, you know, as much fun as it is to play in the sandbox, and you know, when we did the 616 version of Thunderstrike, of Kevin's Thunderstrike, we went right everywhere we went left with the MC2 version, and came up with this, you know, a very different dynamic for the character. And we got to play with the Avengers as they were in the 616 at that point. Steve Rogers was just wearing that outfit with the star on it, no mask, and he was just Steve Rogers working with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Sharon Carter, and the Avengers were, you know, Iron Man and Thor in his new outfit, and Spider-Woman and Spider-Man and all that kind of stuff. I guess it was the Bendis stuff going on at the time. And, you know, it was neat to come, you know, to play with those characters again and make some commentary on the characters and have some fun with it. I mean, one of the reasons I like working with Tom, it's never just playing with action figures. The scenes are all character motivated, and the interactions of the characters are all very considered and very consistent with what's, you know, with how the characters have been handled before. And that's what makes it fun. I mean, you know, you deal with these characters, ridiculous and psychotic as it sounds, you deal with them as real people, as how they've been established to be. So it's not just arbitrary, you know, this guy's going to fight that guy or something like that. It's all done, you know, it's personalities are taken into account, you know, interpersonal dynamics are taken into account, and that's what makes it fun to write the story. And one of the things that we always made clear with A-Next is, because they were younger, they were bonded more like a family than the Avengers proper. They were more like a, you know, an all-star ball team. You know, I mean, they're the Justice League. They're the all-stars. They're the big guns. But A-Next, if I had to make a comparison, A-Next to me was always more like Wolfman and Perez's Teen Titans. You know, they bonded early, and they were having a shared experience that made them feel very much like a family. And we had characters making that observation on the regular in the book, because that was where we wanted to go with it. And what was interesting about the story in Avengers Infinity is that we got to do the flashback where the characters were just, you know, where we could flash back to when the characters were first encountering each other and dealing with each other. And then the story very quickly moves into, you know, present day, and you see the family aspect of it, the teamwork and the reliance on each other and all that I really, really enjoy. And you know, Tom always, when he deals with A-Next without me, which he's done with like Last Hero Standing and Last Planet Standing, working with Pat Olive. And he, well, even when you were dealing with the other books at MC2 the first year, he loves Saberclaw, which is a character that was it just suggested, or did he come right out and say who his mom was? It's Wolverine's kid, but he's only like a half brother to the Wild Thing, isn't he? He doesn't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. No,
Oh, wait a second. See, now I don't feel so bad now, because you guys are
No, it's
you know, I was writing that stuff in the 90s. I don't remember.
Yeah, but Ron Lim designed the character, and
Yeah.
he's fun to do. I mean, I enjoy drawing the character. I've had the opportunity to draw him a few times. And the first time I drew him was as a villain, and then in Last Hero Standing and Last Planet Standing, he ended up joining the team. And but it's a neat dynamic that wasn't part of the original 12 issues that we did. So it was fun. It's a lot of fun.
And Tom, is there a certain Avengers character that you'd really like to dig deep into?
Yeah, as Ron said, you know, they were all our children. I love to me, investigating a character and playing with a character. You know, I end up falling in love with them.
Say J2, Tom.
I do have a special part. If you guys ever read the J2 book, it was such a goofy comic book where we just, you know, made fun of everything, including ourselves. You know, and you know, I look back on that and think, you know, this is the kind of comic book that, you know, you could only publish then, because nowadays I'm sure the accountants would look and go, are we going to really make money on this thing? Yeah, J2 is just a goofy book. And,
He's a great character too. He's a, you know, he's a younger personality, so he's a lot of fun to do. I mean, he's very expressive. I mean, he's a lot of fun to do. I mean, I loved what you and Ron did with him, but I've also enjoyed always handling him in A-Next as well.
Yeah, what I love about him is his enthusiasm, because, you know, he really digs being a superhero. Hey, this is cool. I just had such a great time because you know, we've done this again and again with so many of our characters. Is you know, and I know we've done it with Spider-Girl and so many of our characters that, you know, as they're traveling across the city or just doing something fantastic, to take a moment and say, "Wow, hey, I'm web swinging between buildings. This is a blast." Because I don't know about you guys, if I could fly or do any of that stuff, man, I would be having a grand old time for myself. And I think it's really good that the characters themselves express that utter joy, because, you know, why not? I know, you know, when the work is really humming, I'm having a great time. And I want to express that great time. So I don't know if I answered your question. In terms of the original Avengers and stuff, I've always had a thing for, you know, Captain America. You know, Ron and I got to do, I think, one fill-in issue.
We've done a couple of backups. We did that Nick Fury, the Sergeant Fury backup.
Yes, side by side with Sergeant Fury.
You know, we've got to play with him, and we got to guest star him in Thor a few times and everything. But yeah, that's the one gig that eluded us, was actually doing a run on Cap, which would have been a lot of fun. So.
Yeah.
There's still time.
Well, we're not dead yet, but to build on what Tom was saying,
Let me check my watch.
It's one of the things that I always enjoy working with DeFalco, is that the character, when we are lucky enough to create new characters, or even when we're dealing with the characters that we're dealing with, I mean, if you want people to come back month after month after month, you know, I've always compared it to, you know, there are people who are great actors, but then there were like the TV personalities that were looked at differently and vetted differently, because are these people that you want to invite into your home every, you know, that kind of thing. And if you're expecting people to come back and throw down money month after month after month and in a serialized format, it behooves you to make these characters somebody you want to hang out with for the 15 minutes once a month that you're reading the issues, you know, and you're curious about what's going to happen next because you like them. And we've always faulted on that side of the personalities of any character. I mean, that was one of the things. I mean, Walt's run is legendary, no question about it. But one of the things we were really interested in doing was juxtaposing Thor with mortal characters and basically telling you how cool he is, you know, how much, I mean, what an experience it might be like to be in a room with Thor, you know. And luckily I had a very good friend of mine who was kind of my spiritual model for Thor. He was an imposing guy physically, handsome, great personality, and
Ron, please.
it wasn't you, Tom. It wasn't
Of course
you.
it was me.
I'm sorry, it wasn't you. But it really helped me get a handle on who this guy is, which was all very consistent with the Lee Kirby stuff. I mean, they did scenes all the time where he'd be interacting with a little girl on the street whose dad was in Vietnam, or that kind of thing. That's what makes him cool and unique and different from other characters. This is his point of view of the human race, that he finds us worthy of respect and love, and he admires us because we do get up every morning knowing that we're on a clock. That's incredible to me. He respects the heck out of that.
You don't see it, but Brett's wearing some headgear now.
Yeah. I assume Brett's counter argument is that the helmet makes Thor cool, not all the backstory and attitude.
He's not wearing the wig. Get the wig. It looks good, Brett. You really look good. You look very imposing.
Oh, yeah.
You look Asgardian.
Very Asgardian. Hammers high, Brett.
I wanted to jump back to a couple things that came up during those last comments, specifically Tom with the J2 having fun, and the reluctant hero, I think, is something that is almost played out at this point, and it really is a breath of fresh air when you have a character like J2 and Spider-Girl and others that are embracing of their powers and the fun that comes along with it. So I certainly appreciate that, and I think other fans do too.
I hope so.
And in lieu of the family tree that must have been lost in the 90s, I have Wikipedia about Saberclaw, and he is the son of Wolverine and a half-brother to Wild Thing. So for any of you that are thinking about.
Well, what came up during this last story we did is they originally, at one point, he got colored like a grayish color, almost like a yellowish gray color, right, Brett? And they tried to match that in the first pass in the coloring. And what I remembered working on him early, like I said, I did him as a villain twice, once in A Next and once in a Spider-Girl Wizard one-shot zero-issue thing. And in those, early on, we were coloring him that orange ochre color. And I like it better. I think it works better with the other colors in his costume and everything. And we managed to get it switched over. But what struck me is that's the same color that some of the main trolls are, like Ulick and all this kind of stuff. So who's to say? Maybe he's half troll.
He's got a little of everyone in him.
We've seen some halfway decent looking troll ladies. I don't know. It's possible. It's possible.
It hasn't been written otherwise, so maybe we're making some news tonight.
No, is that his skin color or is that fur, Tom? I'm going to keep asking Tom questions that he has never given any thought to.
It's fur. I have thought of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Saberclaw has it's more fur than it is his skin color?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he might be half troll for all we know.
So I wanted to ask all of you about the format of this story, because it's out on the Marvel Unlimited app, and it is one of their Infinity comics, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, sort of this scrollable, infinite, I suppose, quote unquote, story that you're taking in, very different than a normal, sequential comic book, although it's still sequential. What were your thoughts going into that? What were the challenges? I'd love to hear from Tom first in terms of writing to that format, and then the artists about sort of executing, if there were any differences.
Well, Martin, our editor, kind of explained the format to me, and I thought, okay, 30 panels, and just figure out how to tell a story. Instead of thinking in terms of pages, just think of it as one panel at a time. which I think is how, I think I broke the plot down into, panels, 1 to, 1 to 4 and 4 to 8, something like that. And just, kind of worked it out. I can't draw, but a lot of times when I'm trying to put a story together, I do these horrible sketches that only I can make out, and broke the story down that way just to make sure it worked. And I know that I often give Ron visual suggestions, and he always comes back with better ones, which I always appreciate. And I guess that's about it. The stories come together somehow.
It didn't seem to ruffle your feathers at all. You just went with the
Really, all
flow.
still a mystery to you, isn't it, Tom?
It really is. It really is. You guys, called me up and said, "Hey, could you do a story, this number of pages, blah, blah, blah." And I look and think, how do you do something like that? And then I sit down and I start playing around, and somehow it always comes together.
Yeah. I mean, the format as it was presented to us really didn't give us the opportunity to go, oh, we can do a deep dive into this subject or that character or anything like that. I mean, we wanted to, it was going to be a fun romp, a hoo-ha action thing. They sent us some stuff that was very interesting and very compelling, and the way it was paced, and one of them was very, very traditional. The other one made great use of the format of the scrolling and all that kind of stuff. And Brett was very excited. Tell me if I'm wrong, Brett, but I mean, he was seeing the potential for storytelling and playing with it and everything. I mean, Brett and I have worked on all kinds of different projects that were like for Warner, that was supposed to be like animatic computer programs with moving elements and stuff and different levels, and we've weathered some interesting challenges together. And he was hoping this would be another one of those where we could play with some stuff and use the scroll as part of the storytelling. And I frankly didn't feel like we really had the time for that, because that it wasn't a long deadline. If we would have had a longer deadline, it might have been fun to really come up with some ideas and play with it. There are very few in there whereas you're scrolling up, I was hoping, I was trying to direct the eye down into the next panel and things like that. As Brett inked it, he was paying attention to those kinds of things as well, and he extended some backgrounds into the next panel, and the word balloons are sometimes placed between panels, and they rearrange some things. There's one long scroll, they call it a run, between a few of the phone-sized images that is a pan down the floor during the battle, where you start at the top and there's some dialogue going on there, and then as you follow the action down, Blue Streak is running through the action, and you kind of your eye follows the action down to the bottom where there's other characters having dialogue, and it's one big overhead shot that you scroll through. So I was trying to use the format to some degree to enhance the storytelling. I also threw in insert panels between things to keep the action moving from side to side when I needed it. But yeah, there was some challenge to it. There was some fun to it. I mean, mostly the primary need is to do the storytelling, is get the story told as clearly as possible. The gimmicks are something that if something occurs that enhances the storytelling, I'll embrace it and try for it. But I didn't really go crazy on it. The one example we were shown that was very impressive, that had like camera moves where you were almost panning through a situation, it was very skillfully done, and it showed the potential for the format. And I'm not sure I really pursued it as doggedly as I might have. And I would welcome the opportunity to do something with a longer deadline where Brett and I could collaborate, and he could make some suggestions, and maybe we might be able to play with it a little bit more. But that wasn't going to be the case with this one, unfortunately.
So
Right,
well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of threw me. I'm like, the idea of it being on a phone, how is this going to work? But when they sent the samples, the one sample really impressed me because it was very cinematic in the way that the artist approached it. One panel in particular that just really grabbed me was, you start with the panel with the camera looking head on at Jarvis coming through a door, and then as you scroll up, the perspective in the panel shifts down along the floor and over a table and off the panel, and the movement of scrolling, is like the camera moving in a film across the scene. And this artist, who I don't recall who it was, just did a fantastic job of doing that without knowing how he conceived of the project, if he had more time than we did, or Ron's right, we really were. I mean, this was a ridiculously tight deadline. I was negotiating up front for, no, I can't do that. Can you give me more time? And then the second one was like 2 weeks. And it's like, this is really cramming it in because we didn't know what we were getting into. And Marvel also had it set up like, oh, well, it's only 6 pages, but it really was 7.5 pages on the boards. And so it was a little bit more work than that, and we're feeling your way through it with a new format like that. And we had that when we were working on the Warner Brothers projects. And we did 12 different books. 4 of them were animatic type things, and then something that was kind of in between, and then just children's books. And by about I'd say the 3rd one, we hit a stride. We knew what the format was. We knew, what we could do, what we each had to do to, get the final product that we wanted. And I mean, Ron is great at, moving characters and telling the story visually, but when you get a new format, I believe you do still need a little bit of time to take what you have as an artist and adapt it to that. And so, Ron did a great job with the time that we had of doing things a little differently within this format, because there's certainly things he can't do in this. You're not getting a big splash page and little it's all the same size panels, and they're moving. So, there's a limitation there, and you have to learn to work within it. I think if we had a chance to do more of these things, we might be able to do something that approached that one that we were really excited about. But it was fun in the end. And I'll just go back to the editor. For me, working with Ron is always, some of the most fun I have doing comics. Editors are hit or miss. And, Martin was just terrific to work with. So the overall experience, in spite of the compressed deadlines, turned out to be really positive.
So I have a question for you, and you kind of answered the one I was originally going to ask, but as it pertains to working in this format, as opposed to, regular physical comics, which are then, translated or then scanned into, digital for us to read. This is created for digital specifically. So does your inking process change as it pertains to that, or the penciling process? Because as you mentioned, you're dealing with panels, but and I don't know what your preferred medium is, because I know many people use, tablets nowadays versus, the, pencil to paper. Do you have to adapt that to kind of conform to this?
You don't have to. I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I think you have to understand it, and I do understand the digital world, but I don't use a computer except as a tool. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I still do everything traditionally on the drawing board. Ron will send me stuff. I'll do it in blue line and I'll format it.
Got it.
The first thing when this came in was they send you a file that's just a long string of panels, and you're supposed to plug the panels in. And of course, on the computer, they're small. And if you were to just take that literally and print that out and draw it, you'd be drawing the panels just a little bit bigger than the actual phone size. Well, comics are done bigger than the actual printed size. Everything tightens up when you shrink it. And so if you're going to work traditionally, especially because the pen will translate the roughness of the paper and the shakiness in your hand and all that kind of stuff, it's not as clean a line. But I figured out how we could fit 4 panels onto a page. So the panels were bigger, and then they were shrunk down a little more than 50%. So everything tightened up. You try to remember while you're doing it to not be as noodly or whatever, because things are going to close up more. You know, try to open up your rendering, you know, but sometimes you go into auto mode, and especially when you're doing something that's penciled and you're like, oh, I'm going to keep, and you start doing it, and then you see it and you go, oh, I should have opened up on that a little bit more or whatever. So again, it's a learning curve. And, you know, some of it is you have to see it in the final print to see how it all came together. So the next time you do one, you go, okay, now I have to be aware of this and adjust, you know, the way I'm doing things. But in terms of, you know, computer or whatever, I mean, I work the way I work, and I will clean stuff up in the computer a little bit, important things or whatever. But the hard thing about that is with the computer, it's too easy to zoom in on things that don't matter. So you're cleaning up the face on your screen, and that face is going to be way down here. And it's like, why did I spend all that time? So you have to learn, you know, what to do and what not to do.
Do you think that this, the kind of vertical scrolling kind of hinders it versus, let's say, the horizontal scrolling that some other digital content comics utilize? Because you can kind of cheat that splash page, you know, kind of by bleeding into the next panel over here, and the person's just got to kind of swipe it over and see a bigger picture.
I have digital comics. I still prefer a real book in my hand. I don't think they'll ever, you know, take the place of real comics for me. And some of these programs you can scroll yourself, or you can tap them and they'll just go to the next panel, and you can fill little panels up on a page and see them real nice, and the computer coloring and everything, and they're real pretty. To me, there's nothing special about it. But I will say, when I saw this one sample that they sent us of that one story that was, you know, the person was very cinematic, that impressed me. So I could see that being something I would be more interested in playing with, you know, not separate from regular comics, but you know, just seeing comics digitally scanned and you know, put into a reader doesn't do anything for me. This, I thought, has a lot of potential to be different and still be effective.
So do you think you'd see yourselves doing this again? And this is really for everyone.
I'd do it again in a heartbeat if it was a project and I was working with people that I wanted to work with. You know, I would hate to do something like this where, you know, I'm working with somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, or, you know, and then you've got to come in and try to, you know, make up for it, and problems are introduced. So there's a certain shorthand I think Ron and I have when we work together, and certainly no fear calling each other up saying, hey, what about this, or can you do that, or, you know, blah blah blah. That makes it, you know, a lot easier. And I think we both are heading to the same goal. We're trying to serve the story and turn out a product that we're both proud of. And so, you know, yeah, I wouldn't steer away from it, but
Yeah, I had fun. I would definitely do it again. You know, especially if I'm working with Ron and Brett.
I mean, my attitude is, depends on the character. I mean, if they made an offer with the ANX characters or Spider-Girl, I mean, they already did some Spider-Girl material that we were not invited to participate in, which obviously I think is a huge mistake. but it would depend on the character. You know, if it was a character that we had some interest in, that had some passion for, then the format itself would not scare me off. Believe me, I miss my widescreen panels across the page, and you know, Pat Olive has been doing a lot of work with I forget what site is his Edgeworld on.
Comicology.
I'm not sure which one it is, but he's designing Edgeworld for the digital market, and I haven't seen it on a computer. I mean, I don't really do a lot of stuff on the computer other than Facebook, so I don't really know exactly, you know, the allowances he's using, and because I've always been somebody that you in my mind, you're supposed to be looking at the whole page at a time, and it's up to the illustrator to lead the eye to a certain degree. And we read from left to right and up and, you know, up and down. And pages are often designed with, you know, with slight overlap or elements that are leading the eye. So having a, you know, making people scroll or move left to right and all that doesn't really appeal to me, just given the skills that I've developed in the way we've always done it. You know, when I think about it, one of the reasons that, you know, this illustrator that Brett and I have both talked about that handled that scroll format so incredibly well, he may not have had more of a deadline. It might just be he's younger than I am. It was much, you know, much more able to embrace the format and make the most of it. You know, I completely acknowledge that that's a distinct possibility.
This is another one for
everybody's younger. Go ahead.
Oh, no, after you. Okay, I was just going to ask for the three of you, and I'll start with Ron. Do you have an ultimate creative team for the Avengers? Like, if you were to put together a team of a writer, an artist, and inker, who would your ultimate team be?
You're looking at it.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's the right answer. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. You know, I mean, come on. Yeah. What am I supposed to say?
But let's say one of you guys is busy, and then you had to, you know, for some reason, a B team.
If Tom and I had a shot at the Avengers and we didn't bring Brett along, Brett would hire a hitman, because that's his book, man. That's the book he's always. That was one of his early gigs over Sal, was an Avengers book, and you know, that's always been his favorite title. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live in a world where we didn't take Brett along on the Avengers. Kick my ass.
Tom, what about you? If you were to put together a team of a writer, inker, and artist for a book for the Avengers, who would you put together?
A team that is not any of us?
Yep.
You know, I probably grab guys from the past who you know, who some of them are no longer around. Because you know, I enjoyed what Dave Michelini did with the Avengers. You know, Big John Buscema.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, Jack. I mean, Stan. I mean, you know, this is not something I think about in terms of, you know.
Yeah, if we're going to go evergreen, I mean, Roy Thomas's run on the Avengers with John Buscema, Roy Thomas's run with Sal Buscema. I mean, that whole period there was the stuff that just really made me want to do comics. But there were even like 3 issues in there where Rich Buckler worked with Joe Sinnott and was doing his own style before he embraced the Kirby pastiche. And they're just incredible examples of really, really, really well done comics. And you know, I mean, Roy definitely had a feel for it. I mean, the stuff that Stan did was incredible. Dave Michelini did some incredible stuff. Roger Stern did a lot of fun stuff, not dealing with the three big guys, you know, with Cap, Thor, and Iron Man. So I mean, there's a lot that can be done, but you know, those are like evergreen teams. Unfortunately, you know, John's no longer with us, Sal is retired, you know, all that kind of stuff. So whatever.
You can still get Roy.
What's that?
You can still get Roy.
Yeah, well, you can still get Roy. And you know, so who needs DeFalco? So it'd be Roy,
Absolutely.
Ron, and Brett. That's what I'm doing.
Brett, any thoughts?
No, I mean, if it's, you know, if it's not us doing it, I agree. Everybody I would pick. To me, I got into comics because of Roy and John and Tom Palmer and that run of Avengers. So to me, that will always be the Avengers, the ideal Avengers. I loved what Roger Stern did with John Buscema on the Avengers. I enjoyed that a lot. And Roger's still, you know, a favorite writer. If I had to pick somebody alive and contemporary, I get a kick out of seeing what Lee Weeks would do, because I just love his work. You know, and you know, Lee Weeks and Roger Stern, that might be pretty cool. You know, Lee,
That would be cool.
you know, he does wonderful stuff, and especially if he brings the colorists that he's working with now, where he works closely with his art design and the color, I think that would be a really special product.
So, are we going to see, or do you have any stories up your sleeve about A Next and the MC2 universe? I know it's based on what Marvel would like to do, but if they came to you, are you prepared with some stories ready to go?
No. No,
Tom only writes on command. Tom does not have a notebook full of ideas that you know, that he's waiting to use. If somebody calls him up and says, we need an A Next story, it's 20 pages or it's 10 pages or it's 5 pages for Monday, you're going to get his best effort and it's going to be fantastic. But you know, he doesn't sit there with a lot. I have ideas that we didn't get around to in our 12 issues that are sitting around that I would make suggestions, and if we were lucky enough to be working together on the project, I have some things I'd like to see happen with some of the characters. But you know, I mean, I don't sit around getting married to ideas that may never come to fruition. I mean, I'm only now, all these years later, willing to talk on Facebook sometimes, show sketches of characters we never got around to and things like that. And for years, I didn't want to do it because who knows? Maybe we were going to get another shot at Spider. I mean, there are still some ideas I'm holding back that I'm not going to talk about on Facebook because we could still plug them in and have some fun with it, you know. So ideas are very, you know, fluid things, but Tom and I have always, as a team, considered ourselves that our primary job description is ideas. You come up with ideas. You know, Tom calls it we should be idea machines. And if we're not that, if we can't come up with an idea on command or on request, then you're not much of a professional storyteller, you know. So we're just, you know, going out, living our lives and still putting things into the computer that can be used for stories. We're putting in the raw, you know, mineral of something we could turn into a story. You know, we keep our antennas up and we watch the news and we, you know, pay attention to the world, and everything could suggest a story. Right, Tom?
pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if an idea pops into your head for a story, a lot of times, you know, we just sit down and do the story. You know?
Yeah, I mean, when Spider-Girl was scheduled to be canceled at one point, and it really was canceled, we had started working on a final issue that was actually another 15-year flash forward type of thing. And then he got the word on April Fool's Day that we were renewed and we weren't canceled. And there was a whole story to that he can tell you sometimes. But I said, so what do we got? And he said, I threw everything away. When they said the book was canceled, I had some notes, but I dumped them. And he says, what do we got? And I mean, basically, because the book was always on the verge of cancellation, you know, he pulled the title out of thin air, marked for death, because Spider-Girl always felt that way. And he wrote a story around it. It was, you know, it was wonderful stuff, gang war stuff and everything. And we hit the ground, we had to hit the ground running. I mean, you know, Pat, the fact that Pat wasn't coming back, he was on other projects at the time and everything. My first question was, so Pat's coming back, right? And they said, no, he's happy on what he's doing and he's working with people that can forward his career, which unfortunately really didn't happen. But when I was told I was actually going to stick with it, you know, we didn't really have time to congratulate ourselves. We just had to turn those issues around fast. So.
And when are we going to see MC3?
Your guess is as good as mine, and whoever the creative team working on it, I wish them the best of luck.
One of those other universes, I think.
And MC4 and MC5.
Yeah.
MC6. All the way to 2099. You have to fill in all those versions until 2099.
Yeah, I mean, the legacy stuff, the next generation stuff appealed to me about MC2. But you know, if you get real high concept, it doesn't become about the characters. It becomes about the concept. And MC2 was never intended to be high concept. It wasn't about even like, you know, not that there wasn't some very terrific writing going on in the 2099 stuff, but the initial launch was all about the concept of you know, flying cars and super cities and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, there were some really cool characters came out of it, but there were also a lot of characters that were just like done for the sake of doing them, a future version thereof, you know, that kind of thing. And that kind of it being all concept motivated and not character motivated doesn't really appeal to me. So, you know, I mean, MC2 was very specific. When Spider-Girl was a success, we were approached to do 3 books that were supposed to be packaged in 3 packs in major distribution centers, like, you know, Sam's Clubs and Walmarts and all this kind of stuff. That was the original concept. And they were supposed to be continuity free and hopefully, you know, appeal to the younger audience. So that's why most of the characters are teenagers. That's why we, you know, didn't worry about heavy continuity about how everybody ended up there. I mean, the pitch on Spider-Girl is, remember that scene in the first Spider-Man movie with the couple kissing with the upside down kiss? Those 2 crazy kids got married and now they have a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old daughter. That was, you know, that's the elevator pitch for Spider-Girl. And it's not tied into all kinds of crazy, you know, you don't have to make it about the clone saga. A lot of people thought that Spider-Girl, because of her costume being like Ben Reilly's, that you had to understand the entire Clone Saga continuity to enjoy Spider-Girl. That absolutely was not the case. And with Avengers, everything you needed to know about the next generation of Avengers was either covered in the first issue, and then we got into the weeds a little bit about what happened in the in-between time during that first year of stories. But you know, it was designed to be clean, a clean start for hopefully new readers. And then of course the sales department didn't really pick up on their end of it, and they were only available on the regular comic stands, and they were never designed to survive on the regular comic stands. The fact that Spider-Girl did was all about what Tom and Pat were doing on that book every month, and that it was a legacy character of the most popular superhero character arguably on the planet, you know.
Well, with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and talk about all this great stuff from the past and the present, and hopefully, you know, into the future with these characters. Thank you for some great new stories with the MC2 and A-Next characters, and we hope to see more of that. Before we go, I want to give each of you the opportunity to tell fans where they can find you and follow you, and, you know, plug any other individual projects you may have coming up. So do a quick round table of that before we go. So why don't I start with Tom?
Well, Ron and I recently did a comic book called The Right Project, which I think is actually being solicited this very month.
Oh, that's in April, yeah.
It's being solicited. If you want to see some fun stuff on me and Ron, this is a comic book with 3 complete stories in it. Because we know how to do that sort of thing. It's a real fun concept. You're going to have a good time. If you're looking for you know, a lot of angst, this ain't the book for you. But if you're looking for some fun superhero hoo-ha stuff, you might enjoy it. I suggest you put it on your pull list because you know, retailers are a cowardly and superstitious lot, and we have you know,
it is supposed to be an April Diamond catalog. So
yeah, it's in the current Diamond
anybody
catalog.
watching this, if you have any interest at all, check it out. You know, when you go to your comic shop, ask to see the catalog, and it's under Apex Comics.
No, American Mythology.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Apex is the publisher. American Mythology is the distributor. So,
And I seem to have been doing a lot of 5-page Archie stories, which appear in their various digest books with a lot of superheroes from the past and the Archie characters. And I'm having a blast working on that stuff. So, you know, next time you see an Archie digest book, flip through it and see if I'm there.
Great. Awesome. Brett, what do you have going on, and where can folks follow and find you?
Well, hopefully no one will be following me. I am just showing up from time to time doing covers regularly for Marvel with Dan Jurgens. We are doing a 4-page story in some Captain America reveal yet, but you know, we seem to be finding things to do regularly. I'm also going to be taking over the inking over Ron from Sal Buscema on a book called The Blue Baron, which is for an independent publisher, Sit Comics. If you like, I tell everybody, if you like this kinds of stories from back in the 80s and the early 90s and the kind of fun stuff that Tom and Ron usually do, you know, these books are that. So it's worth checking out. The ones that are out now seem to have been very popular. So, you know, I hope to be getting going on that pretty soon. And other than that, just, you know, see me at your local comics convention, or just leave me the hell alone. I don't know.
what's your
You
next?
won't find me on Facebook anymore, so most likely.
Well, you and Tom are both doing a lot of shows. What's your next convention? Is Huntsville the next one?
Which one?
The Huntsville?
Huntsville. Oh, and I forgot to mention, or I'm not allowed to mention. Anyway, Pat Argoff and I have been teamed to do a 4-issue limited series for Marvel, which hasn't been solicited yet, and I'm not allowed to talk about yet. And I might have already said too much, but it's
way to go,
doing hoo-ha fun and games.
Well,
Brett, where's your next
good.
show?
I'll be at Phoenix Fan Fusion on June 1st, Heroes Con at the end of June, and Terrificon at the end of July, and then some Galaxy Cons later in the year, and a few others that aren't tied down yet. So I'll be out and making the rounds over the next several months.
And Ron, you have the last word.
Well, Brett mentioned Blue Baron for Sid Comics, Darren Henry's Sid Comics. I've been enjoying my work for them, and will be, as I'm finishing up some commissions this weekend, I will be diving deep into producing pages for the 4th issue of Blue Baron. And Brett, as he said, will be joining us on that title. So I'm really looking forward to that, and doing as much work for Sid Comics as Darren needs me for and wants me to do. I'm also doing private commissions through CatskillComics.com, along with Brett and several other high-powered professionals. So that's always a place you can find me. And there's nothing else. I actually have been. What's that? I'm doing Huntsville at the end of April with DeFalco because he forced me. So I'll be there. I'm also doing Terrificon and Heroes this year as well, the ones that Brett were talking about.
So
are you doing Heroes, Tom? Are you doing Heroes, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to do Heroes, but
yeah. So you know we'll be around, and I also try to post as regularly as possible on Facebook and talk about new projects, old projects, comics in general, characters I like, and we usually have some decent conversations going there, which is fun. And but yeah, I'm very content doing Blue Baron and commissions, and if some Marvel stuff comes along that Tom and I are sometimes called to do, it's always fun. I rarely say no to working with Mr. DeFalco. And I'm very much looking forward to this project that he's working on with Pat Olive that he's not allowed to talk about. Because I miss reading comics that I really, really, really enjoy. I've kind of fallen away from it. I haven't been in a shop in forever. But I mean, I find stuff that I enjoy still, but you know, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing them collaborate again.
And welcome back. Well, that was a fun interview, I have to say. Before getting into it, I was a little concerned how we were going to juggle 6 people. But it worked out well. It was great having 3 different perspectives on the same comic. We've never done that before. We've talked to many contributors to one comic separately, but not all together like this. So this was great. And it was a fun story. I'm not a huge fan of digital comics, the comics that are created for digital specifically. I read comics that are either, you know, the traditional way or comics that have been converted to a digital format. So it happens. It behaves a little differently. But this was fun. It was a fun interaction. And to see what went into it, I thought was very interesting. And to get their perspectives on the creative process and how to make that happen, I thought that was very interesting.
3 big takeaways from this is that first one, we got to hang with Ron Frenz at Terrificon because he's a hilarious, fun dude, and I would spend just be around a guy like that. Tom DeFalco does not have like notes and stuff planned for more stories. He just kind of gets the assignment and goes, which is absolutely incredible that he can come up with these wild and wonderful stories, not at the drop of a hat, but just right on this, you know, as soon as he gets the assignment, he starts to go with it. And Brett talking about, like you just said, Joe, digital comics, how he had to change his style. Because, I mean, he's worked on so many stuff with Dan Jurgens and Superman books and all these big comics, and his inking is always so on point. So how does he translate that to a digital world? So that was really fascinating to hear. We are so thankful those 3 guys took the time to talk to us. We'd love to have them back on just to talk just more about their careers as well. So thank you, gentlemen, again. Thank you guys for listening. Remember, rate, review, subscribe. We have more awesome stuff coming up for you. So be sure to stay tuned.